Hello, Mishpacha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother, and I am here today to discuss my 2020 reading goals and how well I succeeded at them, and also to recap a couple of my 2021 reading goals and discuss one more that I'm adding to the list. So, let's go. So my 2020 reading goals were as follows. So number one, I wanted to read more Jewish and LGBTQ writers. There was not a specific number that I had in mind for this. I basically just thought after my 2019 reading that I had read so few books by Jews and or LGBTQ writers, so I wanted to prioritize those writers in 2020. So I think I have definitely succeeded at this goal. To date, I have read 117 books total in 2020, and of those 117 books, 26 of them were written by Jewish writers and 21 of them were written by LGBTQ writers. I'm also currently reading another book right now written by a Jewish writer, so I'm assuming I'm going to finish that by the end of the year, so that'll make it 28. So if I do the math, hold please. So if I do the math, that means that 40% of my total reading for 2020 has consisted of Jewish and or LGBTQ writers. So I think that is a marked improvement from last year. So check, I'm counting that as a win. My second goal for this year was to read 60 books in all. And I have crushed that goal because, again, I've read 117 books, and I suspect that by the end of 2020, I will have read, in fact, double the number of books that I originally set for myself as a goal on Goodreads. And, as the year went on, I saw I was going to meet it, I just kind of kept upping it more and more until I got to 100, and then by the time I got to 100, I was like, all right, I'm not upping it anymore. But my original goal was to read 60, and I've read almost double that. So, woohoo! And my third goal for the year was to decrease the number of physical books on my TBR that I own but have not yet read. And I wanted to get that number under 100. And I'm very pleased to say that after doing all of the math involved, thinking about which books I've read that were on my TBR and were unread, how many books I've brought in, how many books were given to me as gifts, and this is even including the holiday book exchange that Lindsay and I just completed a couple of days ago. So even factoring all of those books in and everything I hauled this year and I am at 99 books. So I made it to my goal of getting under 100, and I'm not buying or receiving any other books this year. So yes, and again, assuming I finish the 3 books that I'm currently reading, I will be, for sure, well under 100 by the end of the year. So yes, my third goal was accomplished. So great. I met all my goals. So what's next? So for 2021, I also have 3 reading goals that I want to focus on. The first one I've already done a separate video about. I will link that down below if I remember to do that. Hopefully I will. So this is to read one book written by an Arab American author every month for the year of 2021, because I feel like that is an area of literature that I probably read in the least. And so I want to know more about Arab American writers and literature. So that's my first goal, and again, I will link that video down below. My second goal, I think I might have mentioned this in one of the days of the holiday book exchange that Lindsay and I did, but my second goal is to take care of 2 project books in 2021, which are Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I'm going to be doing a buddy read of this with Melissa from Fully Booked. I will link her channel down below. And the second project book is The Essential Writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is a big tome that's 800 plus pages, plus Emerson's writing can be quite dense, so I will be doing a buddy read of this with Karen Evans. I will link her channel down below. And yeah, so I'm really glad to have both of these books on deck as buddy reads in 2021, because I feel like that will help keep me on track accountability-wise. And my third goal that I have not yet mentioned before on this channel for 2021 is I want to participate in the 2021 Reading Women Challenge, because overall, and I'll do a stats video probably like at the end of the year, or maybe slightly into 2021, I'll do a stats video for this year. But I am slightly dissatisfied with the ratio of male to female authors that I ended up reading this year. And so I would like to read more women and also more diverse authors. Again, I didn't do a terrible job, but I was a little displeased with where I ended up. But more on that when I get to the eventual stats video. So as part of my goal of amending this, I want to participate in the 2021 Reading Women Challenge. So I have put together a list of books for this, so I'm going to quickly go through those with you. And, you know, let me know if you're also planning to participate in the 2021 Reading Women Challenge, and what books on your list that you've worked on so far that you're excited about. So these are not in the order in which they are listed on the website. I'm doing them in a different order. So I don't know that there was necessarily a logic to the order that I put them in, but whatever. So I'm using one book to meet 3 prompts. So, and those prompts are an author from Eastern Europe, a crime novel or thriller in translation, and a rural setting. And so for those 3 prompts, I'm going to read Olga Tokarczuk's Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. This has been on my TBR for a little while, and I'm excited about reading it because I've never read anything by Olga Tokarczuk, but she, not that long ago, won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and I have seen people reading Drive Your Plow, and I've heard a little bit of mixed reviews about it, but I think overall positive, so I'm definitely excited to get to that one. The second 2 prompts that I'm planning to fulfill with one book are a memoir by an Indigenous woman and a book about the natural world. And for both of those prompts, I'm going to be reading Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. This is a book that I don't really think needs any introduction here on our little corner of BookTube because it's been going around a lot lately. A lot of people have been reading it, and I've heard, for the most part, mostly praise of it. So I'm looking forward to reading it and seeing what I think. Next prompt, a protagonist older than 50. So for this, I'm going to read Agatha Christie's The 13 Problems, which is a Miss Marple mystery. Nice little cozy mystery, sort of a break in some of the more serious, heavier books that are going to be on this list. So I'm excited to read that, and I'm definitely excited to read more Miss Marple because I really loved Murder at the Vicarage. I think that's what it's called, that I read earlier this year, which is the first in the Miss Marple series. Next, there is a book about incarceration and a nonfiction focused on social justice, and for those 2 prompts, I'm going to read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. This is a print book that I have owned for a while, but have never managed to read the whole thing. I've only, I think, read as far as the introduction, so I would like to finally knuckle down and read The New Jim Crow in 2021. Reread a favorite. For this, I picked The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. It is my favorite of all of Toni Morrison's novels, so I'm definitely looking forward to rereading it in 2021. Poetry collection by a Black woman. I'm going to do a reread of Lucille Clifton's collection Mercy, which I really love. It has a great sequence in there about 9/11. Highly recommend that. I've taught that sequence before. It's really insightful, especially to be written shortly after 9/11 happened. So I'm definitely looking forward to my reread of some Lucille Clifton poems. A biracial protagonist. So for that, I'm going to read The Travelers by Regina Porter, a book that Lindsay of Lindsay's Book Life, I will link her down below, recently gifted to me in our holiday book exchange. So I'm very excited to get to this one. A cover designed by a woman. This is already on my TBR for my Arab American literature project anyway. But for this prompt, I will be reading Laila Lalami's The Moor's account. The cover was designed by Isabel Urbina Pena. So definitely going to be excited to get to this one. A queer love story. For this, I will be reading Chinelo Okparanta's Under the Udala Trees. And I'm going to be doing this as a buddy read with Scott and Nell of gunpowder fiction and plot. Chinelo Okparanta is a Nigerian writer. I'm going to reference the description on Goodreads so I can tell you a little bit more about the book. Inspired by Nigeria's folktales and its war under the Udala trees is a deeply searching, powerful debut about the dangers of living and loving openly. Ijeoma comes of age as her nation does, born before independence. She is 11 when the Civil War breaks out in the young Republic of Nigeria. Sent away to safety, she meets another displaced child, and they, star-crossed, fall in love. They are from different ethnic communities. They are also both girls. And then the story kind of goes off from there. So, definitely looking forward to reading this. I read Chinelo Okparante's collection of short stories called, I think it was called Happiness Like Water. I read that in 2019, and I thought it was a solid collection, and one that was probably important to read. So looking forward to reading more from her. Okay, next is a short story collection by a Caribbean author. For this prompt, I'm going to read Edwidge Danticat's collection of short stories, Krak. I've previously read Danticat's novel Breath, Eyes, Memory, and I can't even get into that book. So, I can't even get into that book. It was a really rough read, and I'm slightly still traumatized by it. So, anyway, Danticat is a Haitian American author, and Krak is a collection of her short stories. And it says on her website that when Haitians tell a story, they say Krik, with a question mark, and the eager listeners answer Krak with an exclamation point. So in Krak, her second novel, Edwidge Danticat establishes herself as the latest heir to that narrative tradition, with 9 stories that encompass the cruelties and the high ideals of Haitian life. They tell of women who continue loving behind prison walls and in the face of unfathomable loss. Of the people who resist the brutality of their rulers through the powers of imagination. The result is a collection that outrages, saddens, and transports the reader with its sheer beauty. So hopefully Edwidge Danticat will not traumatize me again, but we'll see. The next prompt is a South American author in translation. So for this one, I am planning to read Samanta Schweblin's short story collection, Mouthful of Birds. Samanta Schweblin is an Argentine writer. She's probably best known for, I think it's a novella called Fever Dream, and she also has one called Little Eyes, I think. So this is a short story collection, and I really don't know much else about Samanta Schweblin or this story collection, but I'm eager to give it a go, so we'll see how I like it. Next prompt is by a trans author. So for this, I have chosen Casey Plett's short story collection. I don't know why I went super hard into the short story collections for this, but oh well. A Safe Girl to Love. So Casey Plett is a Canadian writer who is a trans woman. And A Safe Girl to Love contains 11 unique short stories that stretch from a rural Canadian Mennonite town to a hipster gay bar in Brooklyn, featuring young trans women stumbling through law, sex, harassment, and love. These stories, shiny with whiskey and prairie sunsets, rattling subways, and neglected cats, show growing up as a trans girl can be charming, funny, frustrating, or sad, but never will it be predictable. So that sounds fun. Excited to read that. I've never read anything by Casey Plett before. A book by a neurodivergent author. Okay, so I had some issues coming up with something I wanted to read for this, and then I came across an academic book called Writers on the Spectrum, in which the author suggested that a number of well-known 19th century American writers probably should be considered as being somewhere on the autism spectrum, and that analysis included Emily Dickinson. And I've read several of Emily Dickinson's poems here and there over the years, but I've never actually read a full collection of her poetry, so I am picking Emily Dickinson for this prompt. So I'm excited to read more of her work. about a woman in politics. So this one I chose a somewhat unconventional route for, because I chose a book that I already have on my Arab American Lit project list, which is Samia Sarah Geldon's The Cairo House. So in this novel, the heroine is the daughter of a politically prominent land-owning Egyptian family who witnesses the changes sweeping her homeland. Looking back to the glamorous Egypt of the Pashas and King Farouk, Sarah Geldon moves forward to the police state of the colonels who seized power in 1952 and the disastrous consequences of Nasser's sequestration policies. So it's about a girl who's part of a family that are politically prominent and what happens to her as a result of these changes in Egypt. So excited to read that one. Longlisted for the JCB Prize. So the JCB Prize is an Indian literary award that was established in 2018. It is awarded annually to a distinguished work of fiction by an Indian writer working in English, or translated fiction by an Indian writer. So for this, I went on the JCB Prize website, looked at the previous books. I did say longlisted, right? It doesn't have to have won, it doesn't have to be shortlisted, it just has to have been longlisted for the prize. So of the books that I looked at that were written by women, the one that I found that seemed most interesting to me was Annie Zadie's Prelude to a Riot. So this says, on Goodreads, in a peaceful southern town amidst lush spice plantations, trouble is brewing. In the town live 3 generations of 2 families, one Hindu and the other Muslim, whose lives will be changed forever by the coming violence. And then it kind of talks about individual characters in the book. Quietly but surely, the specter of religious intolerance is beginning to haunt the community in the guise of the Self-Respect Forum, whose mission is to divide the town and destroy the delicate balance of respect and cooperation that has existed for hundreds of years. Told with brilliance, restraint, and extraordinary power, Annie Zadie's book is destined to become a classic. So that sounded quite interesting to me. What else? An Arab author in translation. This was another one I had a hard time coming up with something for, but eventually I found a list of 100 Arab authors from, maybe it was Book Riot. I don't exactly remember, but I just Googled, Arab authors or Arab writers in translation or something like that, and this list of 100 came up, and I finally found something through that list that I think is of interest to me, and that is a translated book called Farewell Damascus by Ghada al-Samman. Hopefully I said her name right. Ooh, sorry. Translated by Nancy Roberts. So this book is set in early 1960s Damascus, a city that now languishes in the grip of corruption and political oppression following the Ba'athist takeover in Syria. The book opens as Zain Khayal, a university student and aspiring young writer, plots an early morning escape from her house as her husband slumbers. Her mission is to get an illicit abortion. Plans for which she's divulged to no one, and to announce that she wants out of her stifling marriage. A rebel and trailblazer par excellence, Zayn draws down the wrath of polite society and the authorities, political and religious alike, as she challenges attitudes and practices that demean rather than dignify, and a ruling regime that sucks the life out of both oppressed and oppressor. And it goes on, but that all sounded quite interesting to me. So I'm going to be reading that one. And then the last few prompts for the Reading Women Challenge are ones that I'm going to amend because I want to do this challenge on my own terms, and it's supposed to be fun. Reading is supposed to be fun, so I want to read things that I actually want to read and not things that I'm just like, well, now I have to read a cookbook. Like, who just sits down and reads a cookbook anyway? I mean, maybe Britta, I know you do that, but I don't think many people sit down and read a cookbook cover to cover. So anyway, so one of the prompts is a cookbook by a woman of color, so I am amending that to a nonfiction book by a woman of color. So gonna double dip here and use Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow that I already mentioned. Another prompt that I have amended is a YA novel by a Latinx author. I have amended this to an adult fiction novel by a Latinx author. And for that I will be reading Julia Alvarez's novel Afterlife. I believe this is her most recent novel. and it is about Antonia Vega, an immigrant writer who has had the rug pulled out from under her. She has just retired from the college where she taught English when her beloved husband Sam suddenly dies. And then more jolts, her big-hearted but unstable sister disappears, and Antonia returns home one evening to find a pregnant, undocumented teenager on her doorstep. Antonia has always sought direction in the literature she loves. Lines from her favorite authors play in her head like a soundtrack, but now she finds that the world demands more of her than words. So that sounds interesting, so I'm going to be using that for that prompt. Muslim middle grade novel. I have amended this to Muslim literary fiction novel, and for that, oh, I forgot to put it over here. I'm going to be reading Fatima Farheen Mirza's A Place for Us, which Lindsay also recently gifted me in our holiday book exchange. And then the last prompt that I have amended is fantasy novel by an Asian author, which I have amended to contemporary novel by an Asian author. And so for this, I'm going to be reading Susie Yang's White Ivy. This was a book that was just released in November, and we're actually going to be reading this for Lindsay's virtual book club for our January pick. So this is a debut novel about a young woman's dark obsession with her privileged classmate and the lengths she will go to win his love. And the description of it is quite long on Goodreads, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but that pretty much gives you the gist of it. So that is everything that I am planning to read for the 2021 Reading Women Challenge. Again, if you're participating in this, let me know which books you're particularly excited about down in the comments below. And let me know how you did in meeting your own 2020 reading goals. I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, would it kill you to call your mother?